Welcome to the Tomorrow Zone Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Rubin. This conversation is part of our Future Shaping Leaders series, inspired by my book, Enter the Tomorrow Zone: How to Inspire Breakthrough Innovation and Shape Your Future. In this series, we're exploring how senior leaders are thinking and leading while responsible for shaping the future inside complex organizations and markets. So let's get to it. Today's conversation features my friend Dale Lazick. She is the founder and CEO of DSL Direct, and she's bringing a unique blend of expertise in financial services, payment technology, journalism, and content strategy. A veteran payments journalist and industry thought leader, Dale has authored hundreds of articles covering evolving fintech landscape and has contributed her leadership to organizations including the Electronic Transactions Association, U.S. Payments Forum, and Paytech Women. Her work sits at the intersection of legacy systems, emerging technologies, and the future of financial innovation. Dale, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deb. It's great to be here. And I congratulate you on your book. It's a great read. I thoroughly enjoyed it and I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much. So I was thinking back to when we first met, Dale, and it was the first week of June in 2016.
That's correct.
In Manhattan. We were attending the Singularity University Exponential Finance event. And I don't know about you, but I was getting my mind blown at the time. And I remember, I think that was the event where you and I participated in a sci-fi design inspiration workshop, which
Very true.
really expanded my thinking. But I think we kind of bonded over, just our love for exploring not only what's possible now, but what's next.
Absolutely. That was a great time.
Yeah. And so I'm so glad that we've stayed in touch ever since. I mean, every interaction with you is so fun. And I love your take on the world and your eye for new angles. So before we dive in, I would love it if you could just share a 30,000 foot view of the work that you're leading right now and the strategic focus behind it.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be affiliated with several leading trade publications. The Green Sheet has been around since 1983, and I joined as a staff writer in 2014. And I have just really enjoyed bonding with the amazing executive team there. And I also write for Vending Times because I'm fascinated by unattended technology. I see it as a real growth area. And I also work individually with companies and individuals who want to amplify their message and they want to create really compelling and meaningful content.
I'm really curious about the unattended technology. We'll have to dive into that a little bit. Um, so Dale, I know that you've really been committed to staying on the forefront of what's new and what's next. What sparked your commitment to the challenges that you're working on right now, and why does it matter to you at a strategic level?
You know, when I think about the challenges that I'm facing today, they're really the same ones that I faced all the way back at the beginning of my career. Before I even began writing about our industry, I was one of the feet on the street, and then I moved on and I became affiliated with equipment manufacturers, and I was dealing with a very high level wholesale distribution type scenario. And the challenge has always been the same: to extract meaning from everything that I'm observing and to articulate it in a meaningful way. And that was my focus in selling, and it's definitely my focus in content creation and journalism as well.
That's so important these days. One of the things that we've been diving into lately at Tomorrow Zone is just that very topic, meaning. And I've even heard people say that we're moving into a meaning economy, especially with the rise of so much abundance of content through AI. I'm just curious, when you talk about extracting meaning. Okay, this question is going to sound weird. It sounds weird already in my head, but like, can you share a little more about what that means for you?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up AI because when you think about artificial intelligence is predicated on some very basic human-like principles. And I would think one of them is sense making, and the other one is pattern recognition. And when I look back at how far we've come from the early days where everything was so uniform and we had a POS device sitting on a counter and you had people lining up and waiting to pay and maybe one or two different ways to pay. And look at what we have now. You can pay invisibly, nonchalantly, in the middle of a desert, recurring, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, you have so many different ways of paying now and of just having payments immersed into whatever environment you happen to be in. And I remember the app revolution. It was a very exciting time. I felt like it was a renaissance because we went from a single use machine into an app marketplace, and it happened very quickly. And now I look around and I see that if we're not careful, we could just fall back into that same uniformity again if we let AI do our speaking and our writing. We're not going to really differentiate. And more importantly, we're not going to bring our own patterns and the things that we've carefully curated and cultivated that are unique to each one of us. And we lose that because the pattern recognition that's happening at an AI level is all based on metadata. It's ambiguous, it's impersonal, and it's data at scale. I think it's much more important to have personal data as part of the conversation. Otherwise, what would differentiate one writer from another if AI is doing all of our storytelling for us?
Yeah, I think that that is it's so important. It's something that we're thinking about quite often in my team. I mean, I've been using AI for a long time. You actually interviewed me about it years ago when I first started back in 2016. But now it's so abundant, and it is something that we're concerned about. Like, how do you maintain your edge and your differentiation when everybody starts to sound the same because everybody has access to the same tools? Like, there is definitely a great advantage to the productivity enhancement, but I'm also on the flip side really careful about, okay, I don't want to lose the edge of what makes us unique as individuals. How do you guard against that? Because this is kind of your world day to day.
Okay, well, when I think about the principles that you laid out in your book, I think you call them shifts. You had align, imagine, co create, empower, and evolve.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay,
Probably got an
so,
A on that.
well, look, we're friends, right? And I thought those were really phenomenal. And my process is very similar to yours, but I flip it a little bit. I don't start with aligning. I begin with imagining. And this is really this is how I feel that any of us could really survive and thrive in an AI powered world. One of the things that I do, like any good reporter, I do my research, I do my homework before I even get together with anyone. And I really work very hard on my questions. My questions are a meditation because I'm bringing my own unique understanding to what I'm looking at. And then I want to confirm that understanding. But if I'm really careful with my questions, I can tap into the part of my brain that's connecting with whatever the concept or the technology or the technique, whatever the subject matter is. I'm just making that connection, a very empirical connection. And that is something that no AI can do because I'm bringing everything I have to that conversation. Everything that shaped and formed me as a human, I'm bringing into that conversation. And and then once I have the questions down, which is still I would say that's still the heaviest lifting for me. Then I read the room. And then I look for what is not being said. I look for what's happening between the lines. I'm looking for the subtleties. I'm looking for the invisible elephant in the room.
I think that when it comes to align and imagine in practice, and I wrote about this in the book as well, it's not actually a linear flow because
Right.
all of those shifts work
Sure.
together.
Sure.
I find myself going back and forth between imagine and align, imagine and co-create, imagine, align, co-create, and back and forth throughout any kind of initiative. But I love the way that you just described that. I mean, it's almost like a masterclass in critical thinking because that curiosity that you're bringing to any topic, I think is such a driver. When you ask better questions, you're going to find new inspiration and new possibilities, no matter what the topic.
Thank you. I think one of the best compliments I ever received was from someone who said, we've been interviewed by multiple reporters, and no one has asked us the questions that you've asked. And it was just very exciting for them, and it really made a connection.
So I'm curious, when you began this work,
Mhm.
where did you first focus your energy and why did you start there?
When I first began,
Yeah. Yeah, when you first started to do this kind of work.
I have to just be a little truthful. So I've always been a writer. And 30 years ago, I was a writer looking for a day job. And I found it and I fell into it like a lot of my colleagues in the industry. I don't think any of us really went to high school thinking that we'd grow up to become a payments industry executive.
Yeah.
As I moved up through corporate life, I had more and more opportunities to write about my projects, my initiatives, my team building. And I found that I loved it. And I also loved the industry. So it was kind of like a marriage of two things that I felt passionate about. And so I think that's how it came about.
Well, it definitely comes through
Oh,
that
thank you.
like that passion. I mean, anytime I've interacted with you on, whether it's taking in your writing or even, a podcast or webinar or whatever you're doing, that comes through and it's for sure more than just a job. I mean, I can tell that you love what you do and it's so fun to experience. I was curious, you know, along the way, as you were growing as a writer and in your exploration of the payments industry, or even the what did you call it? Unattended
Oh, okay. Yeah.
technology space, like any of those topics that you started to really dig into, um, what sort of assumptions along the way did you have to rethink as you were growing in that process? Were there any kind of rethink moments or belief shifts along the way?
Such a great question because just the other day I was looking back at all of the bylined articles that I've written for the Green Sheet over the years, and I just looked at the titles, and the titles really tell a story because in the early days, my stories were very hardware centric, and then it seemed like I went from hardware to integration to the whole conundrum of multi application and all of the complexities that came out with that. A lot of people don't realize that the early days of multi application technology was pretty clunky, and there were a lot of help desk people involved getting calls that went something like, I tried to add a gift card program and my terminal blew up. It
Jeez.
erased all of the memory of my payments and now I can only accept gift cards, etc.
Oh my gosh.
And then gradually, beyond integration, I realized I had to start thinking about technology differently. And I began to think of technology not as something that you plug in or not as a tool, but more like a capability. And then, after a few years of thinking of technology as a capability, then I began to think about a capability stack. And what would you want in that ideal capability stack? And then I realized that it wasn't even a capability anymore because things were becoming so advanced, so intelligent, so secure, so agile, and so transparent that I had to start thinking about technology as a language. That was a journey that's taken over a decade.
Can we dig into that a little bit, Dale?
We are living in a time where time, which is, it's really great that we're having this discussion in the tomorrow zone. And I think this is where the tomorrow zone meets the bizarro zone.
Oh, geez.
Timing is everything. As a matter of fact, I am about to blow your mind. Do you see this?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay. This
Wow.
is Postcards from Payments 2026. This
I
is deja
remember
vu,
that.
my friend. We have already been here. We've already had
Totally.
this discussion. And the most cosmic thing of all is that your quote on the front page of this magazine landed exactly under the number 2026 on the cover of the magazine. And I want to share it for the benefit of our audience. Even though our imaginations were way out in the future, the exercise revealed new possibilities for near future application of these technologies, Rubin said. I cannot wait to apply this technique and this level of thinking to the leasing and equipment finance industry.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. When did we do that? That was a long time ago.
It was October 2016. Remember earlier in the show,
No
you said I
way.
interviewed you?
Yes, that was the one.
That's where the interview landed in a cover story on the first issue of the Green Sheet
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
in October 2016.
Oh my gosh, 10 years later.
And you're in very good company too. Another person who sent a postcard back from the future
Hmm.
is our very own Jared Isaacman, who is now the NASA administrator.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So you're in great company.
Wow. Okay, yeah, you totally blew my mind. This is like probably the most mind-blowingest episode yet. You're so sneaky. Oh, but that's beautiful. But you know what? I think it's a really great example of the power of imagine
It is
and just
so
leaning into
powerful. I
that
mean,
curiosity.
yes, I mean the quote really stands the test of time. I mean, you could have literally said the same thing yesterday about something different, about a different type of technology or process. This was really, if anybody needs evidence and proof that you really are the Tomorrow Zone, I can't think of a better example than what I just shared. You literally came back from the future to set up this company.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Man. I'm not sure what to say after that, but thank you so much for sharing that. So we were kind of talking about belief shifts,
Yeah,
and I was actually taking notes like crazy as you were talking because you talked about a really interesting progression of how you were thinking about technology from from hardware to integration to a tool and then a capability, but then from a capability to a language, bringing us to where we are today. And that is so interesting because it is becoming that, and especially when we think about AI, it's not, language is actually our interface to computation power that we haven't been able to access before, which is mind blowing. But then layer on some of the other things that you're into in your world, looking at payments and how they've become not only invisible but almost anywhere accessible. Yeah, and so it's really interesting to think about technology as a language, and if we think way back, actually language is a technology.
right,
It
exactly.
goes either way. So
Right.
that's really mind-blowing.
It is totally.
I know that you've been on this multi-decade journey exploring the payments industry, technology advances, the human impact of that, but also writing. And along the way, personally, were there any like assumptions or beliefs or habits that you had to change or even upgrade along the way?
Yes, I think like a lot of my industry colleagues, I had to let go of my ego. And when I think back at my personal journey, I very much grew up alongside of my industry. And in the beginning, my industry was like my parent. It was just all powerful and all seeing and all knowing. And I was doing my best to learn it and fit in. And everywhere I went, there was this kind of command performance going on with payments and kiosks and unattended, and you knew what you had to do. Basically, you knew how to interact with the machines. And I think the feet on the street and the people who persuaded merchants to give up paper receipts and go electronic 30 or 40 years ago, they did a very good job because payments became ubiquitous and everybody has them and they became a huge commodity. And it got to a point where you can't walk into a business and talk about processing because it's kind of like talking about utilities. Everybody has it, and it's like a big so what. So I had to let go of that egocentric way of thinking about the industry, and everybody had to let go of that. And we had to become more vertical in our thinking. We had to really expand beyond our little capability stack and really begin to understand some of the challenges that other industries are facing. That was a major shift for all of us. And I kept saying there's a bigger game out there. And certainly Jared Isaacman found a much bigger game out there. But I think in a way we all did. We found out that we had to evolve and we had to let go of our ego and become a subset of something much bigger and much grander. But we can always look at what we have built and that little part of the puzzle that we own, and we can take considerable pride in how well we've architected those payment rails and the security and the tokenization and all of the things that that give it integrity and heft, and that help us all transact in a safe and secure but highly personalized way.
What do you see next? Because you've seen it all. You know, you've seen the entire evolution of this
I know, I think I'm
space.
Methuselah.
Well, not that, but like but I mean, you've been dedicated to
Yeah,
it
no, okay.
for like your whole career.
Right, right.
And so you've seen the entire evolution. I mean, that's a really amazing point of view,
Thank
actually.
you.
And like you just stated, you're not narrowly focused only on that. You're looking at the bigger picture. You're looking at the business ecosystem and how does this part of the puzzle impact the rest of the box top, so to speak. And you know, I'm just curious. I mean, you've seen so much in history, and you're a very deep thinker, very curious. And so, where do you think things are going, and what do you see on the horizon?
When I lived in Denver, there was a saying, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. And I think that we can say the same thing about paytech, payment technology. Um, it changes all the time. 5 minutes from now, the industry is going to absorb and accommodate a new regulation, a new technology, a new merger and acquisition, a new consumer trend. And my job is to zoom out, to zoom in actually first and find the people and the stakeholders who are the most impacted by whatever this change is, and then zoom back out and try to connect the dots and see the whole evolution that got us to this point that precipitated this change, and to have a conversation with other leaders who are doing the same thing. They're looking back to understand why this happened, how they can leverage all of these moving parts, and most importantly, how they're going to navigate their way forward. What do they see as they look ahead? You have to bring that context to it to be able to really look ahead. I think it's really important to remember where we came from.
That's something that I really believe in as well. As much as we love to be thinking about future possibilities and tomorrow's zone, one of the things that I have always held on to is that we also want to honor and learn from the past. We don't want to be stuck there, but we're not just going to throw it out either, because I think that there's a lot to be gained by connecting the dots between wisdom and future possibilities as we're exploring what's possible now. I mean, that's how we can shape what's next. As you're looking ahead, what what is it that we need to get right to maintain long-term relevance, especially as you're looking at the payment industry and how things are changing so fast?
For me, I think the number one priority is to communicate with each other and to communicate not, as a sort of not off the shelf communication, but real communication. Real checking in with each other and sharing what's going on openly, being curious and not to be afraid to ask questions. I think, I joke a lot about this profession that I'm in because I tell people it's one of the few professions in the world where ignorance is a competitive advantage.
I love it.
Because if I really don't understand something, it really makes my questions that much better. And that old cliche, explain it as if I'm a third grader. I think, which isn't really fair to third graders. I think they're a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for. But I mean, it's just that feeling that don't just grab an acronym off the shelf and run with it. Just take the time to really look around and think about the people in your life, in your company, your prospects, your clients, and think about what you have in common and openly wonder and be fascinated with what they're going through, not only in their roles, but the human journey as well. I think it's all connected. And I think we're living in a time where people want more than anything to be more personal, to be, there's more sharing than ever before. Personal life, personal journeys, personal milestones. And I think that's a real gift that can bring us together. It has the potential to bring us together if we don't abuse it.
That actually is something that I think also is going to become more and more important, is real human connection, human to human connection. Tech gives us so many ways to connect, but this human to human connection, that's the thing that matters. Um, I could sit and talk with you forever. This has been so fascinating, Dale, but we're already to the lightning round. I have a few quick questions. I just have fun with this. So I wanted to just kind of hit you with a few quick questions, just looking for short responses. So the first one is a fill in the blank. Long-term relevance requires blank.
Curiosity.
Good one. In one word, what word best describes what this work has demanded of you?
Imagination.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What is a signal or a shift that you believe leaders might be underestimating right now?
Understanding the difference between innovating and modifying or iterating.
Can you say just a little bit more on that? That was kind of
Okay,
juicy.
so I mean, if you understand the difference between true creation, when you're creating something that's fresh and raw and new and you're bringing it into the world, that's a very different experience than when you see something and you tweak it and you make it a little better and you call that an innovation. It's not an innovation, but when you change, when you break the mold, when you introduce a whole new way of being in the world, um, the iPhone, uh, you know, a real game changer. There's no substitute for that. There's no substitute. I mean, okay, I had an iPhone 5, and now what are we up to now? iPhone 17?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
iPhone
I don't even
42,
know.
they all look the same now.
Yeah, right. But but anyway, that's what I meant there.
Yeah, I love that. So one last question. Looking back, what do you wish someone would have told you before you started this journey?
Oh, okay. I wish somebody had told me that the world doesn't run on Dale Standard Time.
Oh, jeez.
It would have saved so much grief.
That's actually really, really wise. I think we can all take a personal note on that one. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Dale, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story on the show.
My pleasure, Deb.
To our listeners, if you're serious about shaping your future, I encourage you to start with my book, Enter the Tomorrow Zone. If it sparks ideas, reveals gaps worth exploring, go ahead and reach out to us at tomorrowzone.io. We would welcome the conversation. Thanks again for listening. And I encourage you, as always, stay curious and choose to make awesome happen.